Welcome to the South Stage, our panel, How Technology is Unleashing Veteran Leadership Across America. Please welcome Ry Barcott, co-founder and CEO with Honor. Mike Hutchings, CEO, Combined Arms.
Thank you.
And your moderator, Lieutenant General retired Mike Groen, advisor, SCSP.
Very good. Well, thanks everybody for coming to the early panel today. Really glad to have like two superstars in the veterans arena now. I mean, it's great to deal with both of you. Ry Barcott with Honor is the company, and then Mike Hutchings from Combined Arms, both veteran support agencies that help veterans, but also like help shape policy and help kind of build the whole framework for how we take care of veterans. So what I'd like to do is maybe Ry, if you could start, if you could just kind of tell us about With Honor and kind of like what are your primary objectives today.
Sure thing. Well, thanks, General. Appreciate it. Semper Fidelis. Great to have everybody here. I started With Honor about 9 years ago with two veterans, David Gergen, the late David Gergen, bipartisan presidential advisor, and Peter Dixon, the co-founder of Second Front, who General Groen worked with significantly on cyber force issues. And our focus was really on this kind of stunning statistic, which was that Congress used to be represented by about 70% who were veterans, who had served and worn the nation's cloth, and today that number is below 20%. So from a high water mark to about 20%. And what we found was that the veterans in Congress historically have acted in a more bipartisan way. Obviously, the country is facing tremendous divisions. Congress's approval ratings a couple years ago dropped below that of a used car salesman. So you have basically the least trusted institution in American public, yet one certainly very important one, the first branch of government. And then you have veterans that fortunately is one of the few groups that still maintain a high degree of trust across the United States. And so what With Honor tries to do is fight the polarization that's just ripping us apart, particularly in Congress, by helping to elect and then support principled veterans who commit to a pledge to serve with integrity, civility, and courage, and then meet every 2 weeks and get things done that matter. And that ranges in national security on AI policy. We're here at the SCSP, which has been a tremendous partner of ours since the establishment of the National Security Commission on AI, to many veteran issues. One of the first pieces of legislation that we worked on was the 988 National Suicide Hotline, which was initiated by Marine veteran Seth Moulton, who's one of the founding members of the bipartisan caucus called the Four Country Caucus. That caucus now has 38 members in it in the House, and we also work with a coalition of 11 senators, all committed to keeping it together and moving things forward in a time when it's very, very difficult to do so.
That's fantastic. Yeah, thank you. Mike?
Yeah, and I just want to give a big shout out to Ry and the efforts With Honor and the Four Country Caucus. I think it's one of the most transformational things that we can see in veteran leadership in America. The policy that they've passed as a collective, working across party lines, the things that they're doing as leadership in the public sector space, has been fantastic to watch from afar. My organization does something a little bit different, but still connected in trying to lead transformational efforts in the United States. And so Combined Arms is a national veteran nonprofit, a little bit atypical in how we function as an organization. So we've actually built a proprietary technology platform that helps all veterans and military families connect to any and all social services. So think about an Amazon shopping cart experience, but instead of dog food or hair care products, it's your benefits, healthcare, education, social connectivity, physical fitness, anything you can think of. We've created a vetted and validated one-stop digital network across the US. The reason being is, look, you have 250,000 servicemen and women transition out of the armed forces every single year. The Department of War creates the largest number of displaced workers in the entire world. So every single year, 250,000 evergreen coming in, assimilating with our general population. And so you have great VA resources. There's tons of other federal agencies with resources, DOL, education. States all have resources to help veterans. Every state has a Department of Veteran Affairs. Counties, cities, and then there's 45,000 registered veteran nonprofits. So if and when you need something past your time in service, it is a complex, hyper-saturated, hyper-fragmented ecosystem. When you go to Google, like, hey, I haven't done my benefits yet, I need some help with my benefits, the first thing that's going to come up is a lot of for-profit organizations, potentially predatory, that want a cut of the money you could receive. They're going to be the ones advertising at the top, right? And so it's very difficult to navigate this maze of resources and know what are reputable organizations and that you're going to be taken care of. So Combined Arms has solved for this from a national infrastructure perspective by bringing all those best-in-class resources on one platform. To date, we've served over 100,000 unique individual veterans. Those are successfully closed cases with an output and an outcome. So real-time data, we know veterans' needs and demands across the entire U.S.
So great for both of you. I mean, I admire what each of you are doing. It's really incredible. And I think one of the things, my thoughts always go to like veterans themselves, right? So clearly there's you can see it on the floor here at SCSP. There's veterans all over the place, in every booth, in every conversation. So like veterans seem to have a natural affinity with the tech environment in a lot of cases, and so like that's a nexus that really when you walk down the hall here, you can see it. So how do we connect kind of like the the individual veteran who has real talent? Like, how are we doing on like connecting those young men and women to companies, that are eager to have people who show up for work and people who have skills and people who know how to work as a team? Rye, you want to give that a shot?
Well, this is really right down the fairway of what Combined Arms has built, and we're thrilled that their board chair, Doug Fauché, is also an advisory board member. So if it's all right, General, I'd love to kick it over to Mike, because he's really the expert in doing this.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, thanks, Rye. So Combined Arms has been in operation since 2015. The tech went live 2017, and then we really started going with traffic around 2019 in terms of people that we're serving. The number one most requested thing in the United States for your veteran population, career search and placement. Number two, volunteerism. Number three, social connectivity. So what is the actual national narrative of veterans in our country? It's not of what you see a lot in commercials that are emotive and bending at your heartstrings. It's veterans want to have an economic impact. They want to help make their communities better, and they want to find like-minded people with shared similar experiences. They want friends. We all do, right? So it's a great national narrative. Successful people that can lead companies, that can be tech startup leaders. And so it is difficult at times to match between open career positions and certain veteran experiences. There's a lot of great leading organizations, specifically in career search and placement, that are doing fantastic things, a part of the Combined Arms Network, helping to place people into great roles, a myriad of roles over there. I'd say it's a little bit of twofold that's still needed for further curation kind of in this space. One of which is there does need to be a certain amount of onus on the transitioning service member to prepare themselves. You do have transition programs in your armed forces, but there is a little bit of initiative you need to take as well in educating yourself on what corporations are looking for, or if you want to be an entrepreneur, like reading research that doesn't stop as an individual. There is another component of that on the other end of that we, organizations like ourselves, need to do better at educating corporations. So there's certain intrinsic values, intangible things that based on our experience, we can bring that can be force multipliers and assets to every country. There's experiences that we've faced at 19, 20, 21 years old that are things that some people will never experience in their life, and you just cannot replicate. That type of experiential immersion that we've had can be an additional massive impact to any company. So I think there's still more curation, data, looking at the data and the best placements, and then the retention rates. That's another thing we need to look more at, is once we get someone in the job, 12 months later, are they still there? Did we do a good match? So more work to be done, but right now the number one thing most requested in the nation is that career search and placement.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like what you've built at what I'll describe as the retail layer of like individual veterans with individual solutions that they can have broad access to, which is just really incredible. Ryan, back to you then. How are we doing with Congress? How are we doing with veterans as an issue in Congress? And then maybe also, we seem to have a wave of veterans now running for office kind of across the country. I think that bodes really well. But can you talk about that environment?
Yeah, the first wave of vets that were post 9/11 vets that ran was in 2018 across both party lines, and we're seeing similar volumes. We'll announce the overall numbers. I believe we're the only organization now that tracks it across the United States, congressional and down ballot, in about a month once the primary season is up. But the bottom line is that post 9/11 veterans are still raising their hands to serve in this in elected office, which is a pretty unforgiving environment. I mean, we're this is kind of like a hardship post.
Yeah.
On veterans in Congress, about half of the veterans in Congress are part of the With Honor Coalition. What that means is that they have committed to serve with the courage, and it takes courage these days to serve in a bipartisan way. Why? Because all of the incentives are essentially aligned to go at each other's throat, to throw a culture war bomb and then go raise money off of it. So the veterans that are part of With Honor are walking the walk, and what they do is they meet on issues that really matter, principally focused in national security and veterans affairs. And I think that one of the most promising areas and one of the most important areas, given the pace and speed of technology, is in national security. It is so vitally important that we have members of Congress from the same tribes able to trust each other and be in a skiff and actually talk about things that really matter, such as what just happened with Claude and the development of an AI that potentially is beyond human capacity to manage it. Jake Sullivan gave this amazing example with one of the senators that's in our coalition, Senator Mark Kelly. He said that when he was National Security Advisor, it took him a year to negotiate one line with the Chinese, the CCP. And that line was that both countries would agree to always have a human in the loop on any decision to launch a nuclear weapon. I mean, think about that, right? Okay, guys, we're going to have a human that actually makes a nuclear decision before you launch a weapon. It took a year to negotiate that out. Like, by God, these are the types of issues that we face, and we need to have a forum in the United States, obviously, where we can talk across our crazy partisan divides. And that's what we're trying to do with, that's what we are doing with Honor. And we actually got our start on the tech side in the most material way with Mike Gallagher and Seth Moulton coming together to help form the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. That was 5 years ago. One of the chairs was Eric Schmidt. This entire place, the reason why we're here is because the SCSP came out of that commission to carry forward these initiatives and say, no matter how broken we are in our politics in the United States, we can still have a space where adults can have serious conversations about things that are life and death for America, for the world.
And sir, if I can add to Rye's point on national security, so Rye's organization is the leading edge, the face of national security. If you think about what Combined Arms is doing, there's a 360 kind of closed loop circle here. So we're the back end of like serving the veteran clientele. Because if we think about the United States, it's an all volunteer force, right? We don't have a draft. So what is the best way to show people that the military might be a good opportunity or a good career path? It's showing that you're taking care of the veterans that are returning home, and that veterans are civic assets and leaders in the space. And so if we're better able to paint the picture right there, that's a national security issue as well. Retention is something that we need to look at. So we need to do a better job as a nation of taking care of veterans and military families. So I just wanted to add that as well.
No, that's fantastic. And Mike, I think I think of this now. I think maybe what Rye described is looking forward. That is, okay, how do we build the structure of congressional committees or legislation or what have you? But you and I were talking before we came on stage about sort of like Vietnam veterans and like the difference, right? Let's think about 1973, not 2003, right? And in how can we reach back, Mike? And I'm asking, you're in this space. How do we reach back to those old guys now who sort of missed that and now really don't have a good sense for like how can they get help? How can they get access? Yeah. Can you talk about that, Mike?
Well, this is interesting. This is actually kind of
and Mike, just to prompt it a little bit, if
Please.
you could also share with everybody what you've done in Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. And so I'll start off with a personal vignette and kind of weave this together. I transitioned out of the military and went directly into corporate America, and I was in an executive position there. And about a year or two later, some veteran stuff started coming up that I hadn't taken care of, right? I was, on paper, very successful transition. But there were some things that I maybe needed to get checked out based on my deployment history. So I went to the VA, and I'm getting offered some options for mental health, and they're kind of educating me on it. And one of the components was group therapy. And I was like, okay, I'll give that a shot. So I went to group kind of talk therapy, and I go in anticipating people like me, and it's all Vietnam era veterans. And I asked my psychiatrist at the time, I was like, yeah, I did that, it was great, but why is that? And basically what my psychiatrist said is these are people that return home to an unwelcome nation, essentially, right? And they were not open arms, and so they bottled it up, and they became career workaholics, essentially, and worked so hard that they just kind of pushed everything to the side. Now they're all retiring, and everything's coming back up. So that's what happens when you don't take care of a returning group of people that have been through significant circumstances. So there's a significant gap there, and it's hard to be able to connect with disparate populations. You have Vietnam, Gulf War I, you have your post 9/11, and then really interesting now is the people that are transitioning out now were born after 9/11. They don't identify as post 9/11. So we have a completely new group of people with new experiences. How do you wrap your arms around this entire ecosystem? So one of the ways that we've done that is we've actually built not just a national layer of support system, but we've partnered with states and we've built individual veteran networks for complete states. So the first in the nation was Texas. The first digital interconnected state in the U.S. was Texas with the Texas Veterans Network. The state contracted with us. So we took all of the agencies, all of the social organizations, the community organizations, brought in corporations and built one platform for the state. We've now replicated that in South Carolina, Virginia, New York. So we have this model that we're spreading at a national level and then a state-by-state level to wrap all the veteran groups into one kind of platform and portal.
Yeah, excellent. And I going back to individual veterans, I am amazed at how many. When I retired, I started working in the AI space, dealt with lots of AI companies, small AI companies. In almost every company, there are young veterans that are populating these new companies, and I've observed the influence that new veterans now execute in all of those new companies. It's just so, to me, it's so compelling because here all of these companies now have the opportunity to take advantage of people who know how to work, people who know, the thing about artificial intelligence applications, it's all about understanding process, right? And here we have these process-trained individuals who know how to work in a very dirty, dangerous environment, but also know how to work in a really highly technical environment where there's still a lot of pressure. Where do we go with that, right? This is a strange question, but you can feel the power that we have at our fingertips here. How can we continue to help, even beyond, some of the things that we've talked about today?
Yeah, I was just at the milking conference with Blake Hall, who's really a remarkable post 9/11 veteran entrepreneur. He created ID Me, and he said that most of the folks that he hires, or many of the folks that he hires at his company, are veterans. Why? He has to invest a little bit more often in the training up front. But it's a long-term investment because they are purpose-driven, they're mission-driven, and that's the best way to be successful as a company, actually.
Yeah.
Whether it's a nonprofit or a company, get a group of folks that are mission-driven and purpose-driven. And so, educating more of the country on that, and maybe getting away from some of the stigma that these wars have carried. Just on one note on Vietnam, I learned this morning that a family friend and inspiration to me, the writer Phil Caputo, passed away. And Phil wrote the book, A Rumor of War, in 1973, going back to those years. And when he also talked about how that book led to an outpouring of Vietnam vets that would reach out to him in a way that at one point became overwhelming. He had his own he had to just stop and say, and so a lot of vets, we keep it bottled up. And especially with the Vietnam generation, they kept it bottled up. Mm-hmm. And so what Combined Arms has been able to do in other organizations is create a platform where you just make one click. It's like, I don't need to go to 20 different websites. I go to one and I tell them what they need. Maybe I even dictate it into the website and they come back with that info. So I think, anyways, both addressing the stigma, realizing that for companies this isn't charity, this is enlightened self-interest, and then having resources that are tech-enabled, like what Mike's built.
Thank you. Yeah, fantastic. And actually, I'm sad to hear that. That book, A Rumor of War, was one of my primary impulses to what, I want to serve, I want to do that too. Vietnam was a horrible place, but I think the idea of national service is so powerful, and books like that and authors like that and other writers like that really can build an ecosystem of, a thought ecosystem of people that really understand, wow, you know what, I'm missing something. This is one way to do it. Yeah. And I'll ask you both. Is there any? So we talked a little bit about the political environment, and veterans are on a high, and people recognize the talent. So it's it's a really good news story. Thanks to you guys and the people you work with in this space. Is there any risk of overreach? Where are the risks in? I'm not saying we help too much, but if veterans start to become politicized, for example, and become, I think veterans running for office is a fantastic thing, based on their experience and their values. But is there a political risk of veterans becoming a political football? Can you talk to those risks a little
absolutely.
bit?
I mean, when I started the organization in 2018 with Peter Dixon and David Gergen, the overall trust in the military, which is separate from veterans, but overall trust in the military was around 70%. It was vast majority. That has declined fairly substantially as the military has become more politicized. By the way, that's happened under both parties. I mean, this is not a partisan statement. The military has become more politicized. There's been a greater erosion of civil-military relations, in part as fewer and fewer Americans serve. Less than 1% of Americans served in post 9/11. Less than 2% of young Americans serve in either military or civilian capacities overall. So we have, more of a sort of divorce from America is less and less connected with the military. Veteran trust is still high. Part of the reason why we engaged with Gallup to poll this each year is to actually measure this. And so we now measure trust in veterans versus other groups. Veterans are not the highest. Can anybody, you guys have any idea what the highest one?
Nurses.
Yes, you got it. Yeah. Nurses, yep. I'll give a shout out. I see some nurses in the room, including my mother. Okay. So nurses are the highest, but veterans are pretty high. And one of the first advisory board members to our organization was the late Senator John Warner. Mm-hmm. Loved John Warner, World War II and Korean War vet. Yeah. And on the last public presentation that he gave, it was to the veterans who had just gotten elected to Congress in 2019, right before the COVID pandemic, with us in Baltimore. We had a gala. And Senator Warner said, among other things, guys, don't take it for granted. Like when I came back from the Korean War, I would not wear my uniform to cross the country at the time because the place was in a different spot. Yeah. So that sort of sacred trust is something that can erode, and it's something that we need to keep our eyes on the ball with.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Rye's absolutely the subject matter expert in this space, so I'll give a much less eloquent answer. But one of the things that I have been noticing more of that I think we need to pay significant attention to as a country is the amount of disinformation and misinformation that's coming through a lot of social, through bad foreign state actors. The technology sophistication to impersonate a veteran and then talk about negative experiences during their time in service through fake accounts that become very popular, it is happening. It is absolutely happening. And so there's things we need to be looking at as a nation from a national security and a risk perspective of ensuring that we're overpowering the narrative of some of these bad international actors.
Yeah.
And Mike, this of course, General, this of course gets to some of your work leading cybersecurity for the Marine Corps, and I'm really pleased that one of the initiatives that bipartisan veterans in Congress have gotten behind is the establishment of a cyber force. This is an initiative led in part by Chrissy Houlihan, a member of Congress from Pennsylvania, who is the only member of Congress who has dual service in both Teach for America as well as her service in the Air Force. And Pat Fallon and others have come behind this, and they're flushing out this concept for a greater cyber first. But the big point is less that specific issue and more that it's happening, that the conversation's happening, and we're trying to address key threats from foreign actors that are manipulating our not just social media for political sakes, but to rip people off to and do damage in our country.
Yeah, awesome. So with just the last couple minutes to go, I want to give you both a chance to for closing remarks, if you will. I really appreciate everybody who's sat through this panel. I really appreciate your presence here. It says a lot about you, and it says a lot about the SCSP and the things that they're trying to do. So if you, Rye,
Sure.
Closing remark?
Well, General, I so appreciate it. This is a rare occasion where I will go ahead and plug something. This is my next book. It's my second book. I published my first about 15 years ago. It's actually a pretty special day. I got the first final copies. It launches in a month, but I got the first final copies to our office yesterday. Then I had galley copies that we were sending around. This is a book about courage, courage in the military, courage in public office, courage in America. And the thesis is that courage can save us. And I define courage as deciding to face risk in the service of others. It's different from bravery. It's not instinctual. It's a decision. And I believe it can save us as a country. I believe it can save us individually, because a lot of Americans are in need of greater purpose. Fewer and fewer Americans are serving something larger than themselves, but that is one of the paths. So that's my hope. All the proceeds from this book also go to our organization with honor. Thank you for allowing me to shamelessly throw a pitch with the.
Great. Well, I'm glad you got your props just in time. So,
that's right.
So great. Thank you, Rye. Mike.
Sir, you were supposed to have me go in front of Rye, so I didn't have to close
sorry
after
about
that.
Yeah.
So, thanks so much for the opportunity to be here and to talk about combined arms and also, share the stage with Rye. Look, as I stated before, veterans are a civic asset, right? And they don't need hand-ups in things and handouts. What we do need to do as a country is come together from a collective ecosystem perspective, a whole of government, a whole of community, a whole of corporation to really propel these assets forward to lead our nation and to lead the world. So we still have infrastructures and all these disparate systems doing amazing things, but they're silos, right? We as a nation need to connect and integrate all these silos, and that's where we see a potential integration with combined arms in the future, working with great agencies and great organizations out there to create and build a national infrastructure in perpetuity, sustainability, to ensure that we're taking care of veterans and military families for the rest of time. So we have a huge charge, a huge challenge out there. There's a lot of work to be done, but veterans are leaders in this nation, they're assets, and we're happy to be a small cog in the wheel.
And Mike,
So
we're delighted to be working with you on
Absolutely.
a national veterans strategy
Yes,
in
sir.
Congress. Could you just share a word on that?
Yeah, so we've been working with Senate Veteran Affairs Committee to introduce a first of its kind, a national veteran strategy. Never happened for the nation. We would require the Executive Office of the President every 4 years to come up with a national veteran strategy and then execution for it. So transformational change is coming. Stay tuned to the news, and thank you for the support on that from With Honor, Ryan.
Well, it's a great idea, and there are a lot of great ideas that happen that go nowhere in Congress because we are so broken as an institution. But we do have a group of veterans, almost 50 of them, and we're going to be working with Combined Arms to actually get this done. Why not have a plan, United States of America, for your veterans? Have a plan across all these bureaucracies. Force them to work together.
Right. So this has been a critical conversation. I've loved learning from both of you. And for everybody out here, I mean, you look at these guys, Ryan and Mike both, who have taken the bull by the horns, who've taken a need and wrestled it to the ground, who've like poured their soul and hard work into our veterans. I tell you what, I have great admiration for both of you individually, but also for the what you're doing, and I think everybody here thinks the same way. So from all of us, thank you very much for what you're doing, and please keep charging.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
All
sir.
right, let's
Thank
give
you.
them-
Thank you.
Yep.